It's Monday, which means mock draft Monday, and we're going to jump right in here. First things first, though, no trades. We will do it at some point, but not yet. And of course, trading down means that someone has to be trading up. You can't just trade down, really. There's got to be somebody that really wants to move up for a player, and this draft class is just not that good. I know that stings, and the past few have been really good, especially offensively last year. This QB class is not that good. Overall, it's just not that great. And that's why a non-QB, non-O-line, non-edge could be the first pick in the draft. We're going to go Travis Hunter just because he's the best player in the draft. He is a very, very good corner. He can definitely impact the game as a receiver. I think he's probably going to end up being a corner first and then maybe 10 to 15 snaps a game on offense. I think that's his probable best case scenario. Maybe even return some kicks and punts as well. I don't know. But he's such a dynamic playmaker on both sides of the ball. He's just so valuable. And in a class where it's like there's no obvious quarterback, there's no obvious defensive lineman or offensive lineman, Travis Hunter just ends up being the first overall pick. At number 2, I'll tell you what. I've gone QB here sometimes. I've gone tackle. I've gone receiver. First QB off the board could be this spot. However, we're going to go a different direction. Will Levis is playing better of late. Past few games have gone pretty well. And he's been banged up. He's made some really boneheaded decisions pre-injury. But Will Levis was someone they took with a top 40 pick, or very close to it, as far back as like a year or two ago. So are they fully ready to give up on him after, 15 games of a top 40 pick? I know it moves so quickly with QB nowadays, but maybe they keep going with Levis. He is talented. He's got a big arm. He's made some big-time plays. It's just, can he stop making all the stupid plays? You might actually have a good player. We're going to get him a weapon. We're going to go T-Mac, Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. Big-time jump ball receiver. He's really a deep threat in general, even though he doesn't have necessarily near elite speed, but definitely elite size. And then with the Browns, we will get the first QB off the board. I've been doing this quite a lot, but Shedeur Sanders to Cleveland. Shedeur is maybe the best QB in this class, and again, it's not a very good one. And I'm so tired of hearing that Dion will not let Shedeur go to Cleveland. Someone made that up, and now people are accepting it as fact. There's no real report of that. It's the same thing with, Caleb Williams will never play for Chicago until he does. We've seen like 2 quarterbacks, 2 players even, in like the past 50 years that have said, I'm not going to play for the first team that picks me. And other than that, it's really never happened, and especially not lately. Eli Manning, that was 20 years ago in a weird scenario. Shedeur Sanders is not even the first pick in the draft. He's not even close to the same level of prospect as Caleb Williams was last year, or Drake May even, who was, of course, my QB1. Jaden Daniels has played so great. He's not on either of those levels. He could be good, could be the best guy in the class, but he doesn't really have one elite tool. He's just a well-rounded, very accurate. I'll give you that. And maybe he's elite accuracy-wise, but he holds the football for too long, as a lot of these quarterbacks do. Cam Ward certainly does, but Sanders is very accurate. I think he's going to be a good pro, but there's no telling that he's not going to go to the Browns because somebody made it up. But I will go with another QB here. We're going to go Cam Ward. Cam Ward could be in play to be the first QB off the board. He's not a perfect prospect. He's a bit of a project, in fact, but that's sometimes where we see these quarterbacks go. Cam Ward does hold the ball for too long. He is the gunslinger, hero ball mentality type player, and that doesn't always necessarily work in the NFL. He's going to need to get the ball out on time and on target. But he's got some tools, right? Big-time arm. He is a big-time playmaker in terms of improvisational ability, but he's a bit of a project. And the Raiders really need a quarterback is kind of what this comes down to. And teams get desperate, and I think the Giants are going to be. They just benched Daniel Jones, and though Jalen Milroe is not a top 5 prospect in this class, and I mean, none of these QBs are, teams are quarterback desperate. And for Brian Daboll and Joe Shane that might be coaching and managing for their jobs, you think maybe drafting a quarterback will extend your time with the Giants. And again, Daniel Jones has finally been benched, which means he's probably going to get cut in this offseason, where it's not actually entirely expensive to do so. And the Giants take a shot on a high upside QB. Milroe is an exceptional athlete, maybe the best athlete not named Travis Hunter in this draft, and maybe even beyond that. He's extremely fast, has a pretty good arm, and a very good deep ball. Just kind of overall consistency accuracy in the intermediate and short areas of the field, getting the ball out on time and on target. It's so important for quarterbacks. Milrow's got a good deep ball. He's extremely fast. He can make big-time plays with his legs. Maybe Brian Daboll is able to coach him up and do what they couldn't do with Daniel Jones. But I worry that with the Giants benching Daniel Jones, which is the right call, it's just you're basically selling yourself on a quarterback in this class, and I think you could be doing the same thing you did when you took Daniel Jones at number 6 overall in 2019, which is setting your franchise back again, putting your eggs in the basket of the wrong quarterback. It's a tough class, but you never know. These guys could be developed, right? We've seen project QBs get developed and be superstars. Patrick Mahomes was not a finished product. Josh Allen certainly was not. You look at a lot of the top quarterbacks in the league, how many of those guys were, number 1 pick of the draft type guys that come in immediately and they dominate? Very few of them, right? I mean, you look at the top quarterbacks, there's like probably a set top 5. Mahomes was a project. He was maybe the 10th pick in the draft, something close to that. I don't think he was a top 10 guy. Josh Allen, he was a top 10 guy, but very much a project coming out of Wyoming. Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick, and he's been very solid, of course. Lamar Jackson was end of the first round, project, developed, MVP this year probably. And then Justin Herbert ended up being a top 10 pick, and you could maybe say, in any different number of order, like the top 5 QBs, and maybe there are other guys on the outside looking in that you want to say are in consideration. But these are just 5 examples. I was another, not the number 1 overall pick, went down the board a little bit, still top 10 though, if I recall correctly, but had things to work on, ended up being a beast. These guys can get better, right? So it's not necessarily as good as they are on draft day, that's as good as they're going to be. But it's certainly, something to consider with taking the wrong guy at quarterback. Anyway, Patriots at number 6. We're going to go Will Campbell. He's probably just the best offensive lineman in this class. Whether or not he sticks a tackle is up for debate. Shorter arms could push him inside to guard, and that's kind of the way a lot of teams seem to see him right now, which is what we're going off of. But very good overall offensive lineman, might be better at guard. Patriots could just use the help on the O-line. Protecting Drake May needs to be a priority. Just not a great tackle class, guys, either. That's the thing. With Kelvin Banks maybe moving inside to guard, Simmons with a big injury, Ursery's a solid player, Milam could move inside to guard, Williams is really raw, Sava Inaya is going to move inside to guard, probably. Emory Jones has really fallen off. So it's a very interesting class all the way around. But in terms of overall talent, it's just not the same type of draft class that we've seen lately, unfortunately. There are good players in it, especially on the D-line, but overall, it's a little weak. Jets at number 7. Speaking of defensive players, we're going to go with Will Johnson. There are a lot of really good corners in this class, or a few. It's really Travis Hunter, Will Johnson at the top. Benjamin Morrison's injury, I think, could really push him down the board. And outside of that, Savone Revel's injury could push him down the board and out of the first round. Maxwell Harrison maybe moves up into it, but overall, it's just not that strong a corner. But the top 2 are really good, maybe even the top 3. But Will Johnson goes to the Jets. Got a free agent at a boundary starting cornerback position. Obviously, Sauce Gardner, you're hoping is going to be a big part of the future, even though his 2024 has not been as good as 2023. Will Johnson also gives you some size and overall athleticism on the outside. He's a great player, and I think the Jets wisely take one of the best players in the draft at number 7. At number 8, have the Carolina Panthers going with Penn State edge Abdul Carter. Again, moving to the edge full-time this year after being a linebacker. He's a really, really special type of an athlete, and he's getting better and better and better off the edge as soon as he gets more and more time there. Again, this is his first year really being a true edge rusher, certainly is, and it's taking a little bit to adapt, but he's starting to play really well, and he is probably going to be a top 10 pick, maybe even higher than this, depending on where the edge rushers go off the board. At number 9, this is where I think the Ashton Jeanty run could potentially begin. However, I do think Jeanty ends up going very high. I think he's a top 15 pick. It's just, if the Cowboys don't take him, if the Bengals maybe don't even take him, where does he go? So today we're going to experiment with what if Ashton Jeanty falls in the draft? And I know, we don't value running back very much anymore, but the NFL continues to. And I think there's a good reason to draft some of these guys high in the first round. And I think we keep seeing it happen with Bijan Robinson going to the top 10. Jahmyr Gibbs was a top 15 pick, right? I think maybe even number 12. These guys go very high in the draft, and when there is a complete of a player as Ashton Jeanty is, he's going to go high. The Cowboys make sense, but I've done Jeanty to the Cowboys like every time. We're going to mix it up. I think the Bengals, if not to the Cowboys, would make sense just because they could use an upgrade at running back. I don't think Chase Brown or, Zach Moss would stop you from drafting a running back as special as Ashton Jeanty. But again, we're going to experiment with a drop today just to see what it might look like. That being said, going to go Mason Graham at number 9. Cowboys need to improve their defense, especially that defensive interior. Seems like they keep swinging and missing on interior defensive linemen, Mozzie Smith being the most notable recently. One of the worst interior defensive linemen in the league maybe right now. Mason Graham gives you someone you can really rely on, and he's just a really, really good player. Saints at number 10. Gonna go receiver here. Luther Burden just is one of the best players in the draft. He's so special after the catch. He's a slot fade king, which we love on the channel. Really, really talented player. And, I think that he's just somebody that could really help out this Saints receiver room. We've seen so many different injuries for them this season with Chris Olave going down, maybe done for the year. Rashid Shaheed, different injury, but obviously he's missed extensive time already, and I think he's done for the year as well. So you look at these receivers, and the room is so bad without those top 2 guys. And even with those guys, Olave is your wide receiver 1, is a deep threat type player. Shaheed is purely a deep threat. Who's really eating in the slot? I think that could be Luther Burden. He'd be a great addition to this team. At number 11, again, I would consider Jeanty here, but we're going to see what happens if Jeanty falls, because we know the Dolphins wouldn't take a running back. I would very much doubt that the Bucks do. Wouldn't expect the Bears to, but maybe. Colts wouldn't. Seahawks wouldn't. Rams wouldn't. The Niners is a you never know with them. They love drafting running back, but probably not, right, with McCaffrey under contract for the next few seasons, and obviously some good backups in there as well. Maybe the Broncos would, but they've got some other needs, but maybe the Broncos, I don't know. We'll see. But Bengals at 11, they're going to really maybe have a decision between T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson, and T. Higgins, I think, is so important to this offense that could also use an upgrade. The O-line needs to be better, but if they let Trey Hendrickson go, and even if you keep him, this is a team that needs more help off the edge, and luckily for them, this is a class with some really good edge rushers, especially some high potential guys like Mykel Williams from Georgia. Again, I've compared him to Trayvon Walker just with the size and length type of deal, where this is going to be a player the NFL views and values really highly, and I think that's for good reason. He's versatile, and he's got real, true NFL size. I think it'll be a pretty good fit in Cincinnati. Haven't really gotten a ton out of guys like Myles Murphy. I think Williams will be a good fit here. You may lose Trey Hendrickson. You got to be aware of that. A lot of times people go, "Oh, we don't need that. The Broncos don't need an interior defensive lineman. We have them." It's like, well, if you look at the guys actually under contract, outside of this year and next year, there's basically nothing, right? And that's the same for the Texans on the defensive interior. That's why they might consider taking those positions. It's not who you have right this second on the team. It's who's under contract for 2025 and 2026. Oh, nobody? That becomes a big position of need. When you can draft a guy in the first round, get them locked in for a guaranteed 4, plus the 5th-year option if you want that. A guy under contract for 1 extra year is not going to stop you from taking a guy that can be under contract for 5. It's not how the NFL operates. It's crazy. I feel like I have to explain that, but I see it so much in the comments. I'm trying to help, but I feel like I can come off wrong sometimes. But it is what it is. Sometimes you got to meet the criticism with, hey, here's what you're not actually thinking about. Anyway, Dolphins at 12. We're gonna go Kelvin Banks. Could potentially move inside to guard. It's just an upgrade on the offensive line for Miami, and that's something that they need. So feels like kind of a natural fit here. The Seahawks really need interior offensive line with Connor Williams retiring. Just thought about that. But and he was a former Dolphin, is maybe why that jumped into my mind. But we're not going to end up going with interior offensive line for Seattle. We'll get there in a minute. But Bucks at 13, still searching for more help off the edge, of course. Shaq Barrett was good there for a while, but he's obviously not in the long-term future of the team. I think he retired to start this year, and outside of that, are you going to put all your eggs in the Joe Tryon-Shoyinka basket? I don't think that you are. Jalen Walker, someone that's played really, really well for Georgia this season. and I think could end up being a top pick in the draft as a result. He's actually been changed on the PFF big board finally, and, he's been a solid first-round pick for me. It's been tough. I've had him drop, outside of the top 20, but I do think there's a chance that he could even be as high as a top 10 pick, depending on where these edge rushers end up going. The Bucs could use the help off the edge. Jalen Walker just seems like a really good fit there. Bears at 14. I keep doing it. I'm sorry if this is getting old, but Jonah Savainaya is one of the better offensive linemen in this draft, is projected to move inside to guard. The Bears need help on the O-line, desperately. Savainaya, which is how you say that, is the pick there at 14 for me. Colts at 15. We're going to go Malachi Starks. He is a top 10 player in the class. The Colts could really use help in the secondary overall. Starks is an upgrade either at, you wouldn't really play him in the nickel with Indianapolis, but certainly an upgrade at safety and can play the nickel if you need him to. But he's such an amazing player. Instinctive, athletic, NFL size, and speed, certainly. He is a really, really good player. That falls to 15 because the NFL doesn't seem to value safeties or nickel corners at all, which is weird because they can be so impactful. Look at Brian Branch with Detroit. Seattle at 16. Gonna go Cam Williams from Texas. This is another guy that the NFL really values because of his size and movement skills. He's raw, he's developing, he's inexperienced, but I think will be a first-round pick due to the upside, especially at a premium position like offensive tackle, and maybe even kick inside to guard. That's a potential possibility. Rams at 17. We're going to go Josh Simmons here from Ohio State. Might end up falling more than this due to the injury. However, really good player, was playing really well in 2024, and the Rams could certainly consider an upgrade at tackle. Corner, maybe, but it's a weak cornerback group at this point. Do you take the injured Benjamin Morrison or the injured Josh Simmons? We're going to go Josh Simmons here. 49ers at 18. I really want this to be Jeanty, but I think McCaffrey being under contract for so long obviously would stop you from doing that. You'd think Jordan Mason in there as well, but I just don't think that the Niners would be able to stop drafting running backs. They love to do it so much. Jeanty is such an amazing player. I'm not going to do running back, but I want to. We're going to go edge. We're going to go James Pierce from Tennessee. This is somebody that could end up going in the top 10, maybe even higher than that. Really, really good player. Explosive, get off the line. And if you look at the Niners, they just need more. Need to improve that pass rush. Not that Nick Bosa is getting super old at this point, because he's not, but you just need more outside of that. And it never hurts to have more edge rushers, even with, a super talented player like Nick Bosa. Obviously, there are two on the field at one time. You got a rotation. You get 3 and 4 that are going to see significant playing time. James Pierce Jr. is a pretty good selection there for San Francisco. Yes, right tackle is a need over McKivitz. His PFF grade is really good, but his play isn't necessarily as good as that has been. Maybe you don't take tackle, but it's a possibility. We're going to go edge here, James Pierce Jr. Broncos at 19. I still think this could be defensive interior, but that offense is just not very good. And I feel like one of the better fits in the draft, actually, could be Colston Loveland to Denver. He could play wide receiver. He can play tight end. He's not really an inline guy, so he's not really like a true tight end. He's kind of like that move piece, power, big slot type player. And I think that's a really good fit in Denver. They're in need of more playmakers on offense, and Colston Loveland is a really, really good player. And I think a really good fit in Denver, especially. At number 20, have the Atlanta Falcons, who just have desperately needed to upgrade their pass rush for a really long time now. They've pretty much got the worst pass rush in the entire league. Nick Scorton can help you move towards fixing that. He's been such a sack artist over the past couple of years with Purdue and then Texas A&M this year. Really good player, young, again, NFL length here. He's 6'4", 285, NFL size, and is a top 20 pick for good reason. Texans at number 21. We're going to go back to the offensive line for some of these teams. We're going to go Wyatt Milam from West Virginia, potentially going to move inside to guard. The Texans just need help really all across their offensive line. It seems like everyone's play has completely fallen off. You got to help C.J. Stroud compete. Wyatt Milam helps you do that. Cardinals at 22. We're going to go defensive line here. That's really the biggest need for the Cardinals, in my opinion, is in that front seven, but the defensive line especially. And it's been tough to find a player playing better than Derek Harmon this season at Oregon. He's been a dominant pass rusher on the interior. Even if the sack numbers aren't there, he's been disruptive, which is what you want. You want an interior penetrator from your interior defensive lineman. Those are the guys that go high in the draft. Harmon could go even higher than this, but the Cardinals get a good value pick at 22. I don't care what the PFF big board says. Some people see and they go, "Why do you always take the worst pick for my team? You had to go down to number 90 to get him." It's like, that doesn't mean that's how good he is, just because PFF has him down the board, right? So Harmon's a really, really good player. Is going to be one of the first interior defensive linemen off the board, probably. Commanders at 23. I still feel like this needs to be an edge rusher. They're so weak there, and their team overall has played great, but you need more off the edge, and Shamar Stewart has, again, been a really, really good player for A&M this season, like Nick Skorton. Stewart, again, has incredible size, 6'6", 290, but moves like he's a lot lighter than that. Really good athlete. Because of that size, has the ability to maybe slide inside as well. Not that you would really need him to with, the Commanders. They're so strong in the interior when everybody's healthy with John Allen and Deron Payne and Johnny Newton now. But Stewart off the edge gives you a ton of size. This can be a team that would be really tough to run the ball against, and now you can actually get some pass rush in there as well. Ravens at 24, they've got one of the worst DB groups in the NFL right now based on how many yards they're giving up per game. It's kind of insane, but I'm not going to go that way. You're going to hate it, but maybe you won't. I'm going Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. He's probably a top 10 player in the class, if not even better than that. Derrick Henry is only under contract for 2025. I know you have some other options, right? Oh, Justice Hill has been a good player. He has a rotational guy. When he's healthy, I know you have a really great speed back in Keaton Mitchell. He's a rotational guy. And then Rasheen Ali is also on the team. But is that going to stop you from drafting Ashton Jeanty? Henry's under contract and still dominating somehow as he's like 30 years old. It's incredible. But is he going to get picked back up by the Ravens in 2026 and beyond? I don't know. So you can have a great 1-2 punch with Jeanty and Henry, and bringing in Jeanty will also extend the career of Derrick Henry probably. You don't have to run him 30 times a game. You can give him maybe 12 or 13 carries, and Jeanty can split, and then you can rotate some of the other guys in as well. I know it seems like, why a running back for the Ravens? But I think it actually does end up making a lot of sense because he's such a good player. He's not going to be here. He's going to go earlier than this, but we experimented with the drop. I think the Ravens is probably his floor. I don't think he goes beyond the Ravens. So that's what we experimented with today. Yes, they need DB, but it's not that encouraging of a cornerback or safety class at this point with who's available. And a lot of the top offensive linemen are off the board. What do? Just take a tackle or a guard because you need that? Or as corner because you need that? Take the best player available, and it's very obviously Ashton Jeanty at this point. He, again, probably goes to the Cowboys or the Bengals maybe. But outside of that, it's pretty tough to find a spot. Thought maybe Denver, but went for Colson Loveland instead. Chargers at 25. We're going to give Kenneth Grant to Jim Harbaugh for the second time, of course, at Michigan. And now with the Chargers, they need help on the interior defensive line anyway. And it's a good marriage there back with Jim Harbaugh. That defense has been great, but continue building into that. Kenneth Grant helps you do that. Packers at 26. We are going to go with the corner here, Benjamin Morrison. Now, there's a real thought now that he could fall out of the first round. Seems like maybe his injury is going to be a little bit more severe and could hinder his future more than initially thought. That's why he drops here. But he'd be a really good fit with Green Bay. He's a really good player, but the injury could potentially push him down the board maybe quite a lot. He falls here to 26, could maybe even fall beyond that as well. At number 27, have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's never a receiver, but I'm going to continue to do a receiver here. They need something more reliable, and I think Emeka Egbuka fits that. He can play in the slot. He can just get fed targets, and you know he's going to catch the ball. He's good after the catch. He is as reliable as they come at this point in the draft. Emeka Egbuka to the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 28, have the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going running back here. It's a great running back class. Amarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Quinshad Judkins, Quinshawn Judkins. I always sound so congested when I try to say that. Travion Henderson is very good. Ollie Gordon's fallen off a cliff. But I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson. I got a comment that said, no way Caleb Johnson's a second running back off the board when Hampton and Judkins and Henderson are significantly better. I just don't think you've seen Caleb Johnson play this year. He's been spectacular. I do love Amarion Hampton, and I think Judkins and Henderson are very good backs. I think it probably goes in that order, though. I think Caleb Johnson potentially is RB2 now, and then I might have Hampton, Judkins, Henderson. Really good players at Ohio State, but I think Caleb Johnson is better based on what we've seen in 2024. Great players, but maybe not the second running back off the board just because they play at Ohio State. Caleb Johnson has been unbelievable for Iowa. At number 29, Howie Roseman of the Eagles. Think we're going to go defensive line, like always for them. It seems just to be the meta, and they need help on the edge anyway. And this class is really good. There's still so many talented edge rushers. Overton's like the hybrid edge, interior defensive lineman. Jackson's got incredible size. Uman Mielin's played pretty well this year. Galat, was thought of pretty well going into the year. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau are very solid players. But we're going to go Kyle Kennard. I also like Mike Green. I also like Donovan Ezeraku. It's a really talented edge class. Kennard has played basically as well as anybody in the country this year. He's been a dominant player. Georgia Tech transfer has been really, really good, and the Eagles need to improve that pass rush. Bills at 30. We're going to go interior defensive line, and I'm trying to think which one would be the best fit, because there are some really good players here. Tyleik Williams is really, really good. I'm going to go Walter Nolan. Show him some love. He's a really, really good athlete, formerly the number one recruit in the nation to A&M, and then transferred to Ole Miss. He's shown flashes of dominance that could suggest he goes even top 20, maybe even higher than this. But really, really dominant player at times, and I think would be a good fit for that Buffalo defense. Chiefs at 31. Going to go with Tyler Warren from Penn State. Probably the best true inline tight end in the class. Travis Kelce's like 35 years old. You got to prepare for life after him. And Tyler Warren has been a dominant player for the Nittany Lions so far this season. He's been incredible, and I think could absolutely get into the first round. And we'll finish it out with the Lions. It's always edge for me here, and it's going to continue to be. We're going to go with Ohio State's JT Tuimoloau. So many good edge rushers still available, but that is my mock draft here for the 18th of November here in 2024. You can check it out, and hopefully we end up nailing every pick in the draft here several months away. It's probably going to happen. We're going to get every one. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.